March 22nd, 2022 to order. And the first item is the roll call, Abby.
Bruce,
Here.
Palson,
Here.
Ramsey,
Here.
Schaefer,
Here.
Slavish,
Here.
Erdman Hermans. I'll keep an eye out for her, and Mayor Brar is present.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, the Plan Commission minutes of March 8th, 2022. Need a motion to approve.
Ramsey will move approval.
Slavish will
Schaefer,
second.
second. Okay.
So
Slavish.
motion by Elder
Or
Ramsey,
Schaefer.
second by Commissioner
Savage.
Schaefer and Commissioner Slavish. How about that? So-
Whoever you can type easiest.
Okay, any changes, questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of Plan Commissions for March 8th, 2022, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. The next one, the first agenda item is the sign design review for Fox Tobacco and Vape, 2413 Allen Boulevard. Abby, oh, well, Daphne.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So this is for a new sign at this location. I looked it up and this property doesn't have a comprehensive sign plan or anything. So we brought it to Plan Commission. It's 22 square feet and the store frontage is approximately 23 square feet. So it fits within the sign ordinance.
Well, any questions or comments for Daphne? We have a tobacco and vape in Middleton. How about that?
Ramsey will move approval.
Okay, need a second.
Bruce will second.
Okay, so the motion by Elder Ramsey, second by Commissioner Bruce. Any questions or comments? It's located in that Spring Shopping Center. If it's an Allen, then definitely, is that where it is?
Yeah, it's just south of the Middleton Spring Shopping Mall. It's
Okay.
like it's on the like right-hand side if you're going north.
There's
Oh,
a liquor store there and then the,
Okay, I know where that is. I know where that is. So, yeah, there's a restaurant, popular restaurant there. So any questions or comments? It's how many we got? A lot of tobacco places or vape in Middleton, or I know we got one along the University Avenue, right?
I'm not sure how many we have, but it is a retail service, so it's permitted within the zoning district.
Okay.
I think we have
Well-
2 specific tobacco shops.
Mhm.
Mhm. Well, I imagine there's a need, so that's how it is. So and we are only approving the sign here. So any questions or comments? Okay, so the motion is to approve the sign, design review, Fox Tobacco and Vape, 2413 Allen Boulevard. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Well, motion passes unanimously. So I don't think there are too many people on the commission who smoke, but that's different.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, so the next one is item number 2, specific implementation plan modification design review of addition to Chef Motors 3440 Tribeca Drive. Daphne.
Yes, so this is, they're proposing a new addition for showcasing cars indoors. And overall, it I think it adds a lot to the building and makes it look nicer. They're adding a lot of landscaping to the front, so they're actually decreasing the total impervious surface by about 150 square feet. And then they're keeping all the same parking spaces for visitors and ADA and all of that. They're only taking away some for their outdoor vehicle inventory space.
Thank you, Daphne. So I like they are taking care of the stormwater issues, which is important. And actually it's, as Daphne said, they're reducing the impermeable area by 150 square feet, which is very good. And the second is they are not, the parking will be adequate. They're not doing anything for the employees and the visitors. That's only the show places which will have fewer of them, and they probably will go inside. So, and the third is that what they have proposed, it does look nice. So, and then fourth is they are adding more landscape, so the place is going to look a lot nicer. So I'm not a design person, so I think I will let the others comment on that part. But yes, need a motion or any questions or comments at this time.
I'll go ahead, Randy.
Bruce will move approval.
Yeah.
Okay.
Schaefer will second.
Okay.
Approval contingent on resolution of engineering staff comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt.
So the motion by Commissioner Randy Bruce and second by Commissioner John Schaefer. Okay, questions or comments now? Please raise your hand. I see no raised hand at this time. Wow, everybody's happy with any questions or, well, all right, Randy Bruce, please go ahead.
I would just say that I think they did a nice job integrating the addition into the original design, and I think it'll be attractive and a nice addition.
Okay, I think I agree that the building design looks great. A lot of glass there, and parking and stormwater issues are addressed. So I think can't really ask for more, right? Okay, if there are no questions or comments, the motion is to approve the specific implementation plan, modification design review of addition to Chef Motors 3440 Tribeca Drive. And it includes all the engineering comments. All those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Well, motion passes unanimously. Great job, guys. Thank you. We are on to item number 3. And this is going to be a little bit longer than what we had so far now. So this is the University Avenue corridor plan, and well, the SRF, they're going to provide a presentation, but definitely you're going to be the one handling it. Go ahead, Daphne.
Yeah, so I'd just like to introduce Paul with SRF. He's the consultant we've been working with to develop the plan. So he's going to have a short presentation for us, and then we're going to reserve most of the time to discussing just a lot of the points in the plan. So go ahead, Paul.
All right,
Paul?
thanks, guys. Hi,
So Paul,
Mayor Gertie.
how do you pronounce your last name? I know mine is hard, but I want to pronounce it properly.
It's Chelavold, just like church and Chelavold, kind of how it looks. So yeah, no
Chelavold.
Secret letters in there at all.
Chelavold, so
Yep.
musical. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, well, thanks you guys. Thanks for the opportunity to present here. Before I get started, I just wanted to introduce one more staff member. Mitchell Browse is on the call as well. He is a coworker of mine, really helped develop some of the design guidelines for the University Avenue corridor plan and some recommendations that we'll talk about here tonight. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully a presentation will be before you here. Just give me a head nod if you can see that, okay?
Yep.
Looks
Okay,
great.
very, very good. So I'll be brief tonight just because I know You guys probably have been given some additional materials today as well to talk about this plan in itself. But the University Avenue Corridor Plan, we developed this plan. This is, as some of you may recall, this began back in July. And really what we were tasked to do was to assist the city with developing a corridor plan along University Avenue from Parmenter to Allen Boulevard, about 1.5 miles. And one of the things in the RFP that stood out was we understood that the University Avenue corridor itself as a whole was changing. And we wanted to set a 10 to 20 year vision for the corridor, something that we can aspire to look for across many, many components that go up and down the corridor in this area, and to develop a consistent standards for the corridor for parcels moving forward. So it's not going to be a full erase or a full, take everything out that's already there, but as development things come before the commission here to help you make decisions and to put that standards and anticipate these future needs in place. We also wanted to put a big focus on increasing housing and mixed use commercial activities and densities along the corridor to make University Avenue less auto-centric. And really parts of this as it evolved too is we understand that the investment that the city and the developers are making and the residents to this corridor, and we wanted to help guide and prioritize some of those investments. So real quick, what we have produced here is a study of 1.5 miles of corridor that essentially went, like I mentioned before, from Parmenter Street, this area highlighted in green, all the way to Allen Boulevard, about 142 total acres. And it should be noted that parts of our study did include both Franklin Avenue and Elmwood, a block north and south to accommodate some potential bike routes and some studies and cut through paths, things like that. Also incorporated some of the areas around the elementary school on Brand Street and Middleton High School here as well. And the culmination of really our work was a five chapters that really included an introduction of why we're doing the study, some existing conditions, and that really sets up chapter 5, the recommendations. So that's the preface for a discussion of the current conditions and what the recommendations are going to be. We talk about the planning process, and I'll get into that just here in a little bit. And we wanted to establish a set of visions and goals and guiding principles that the city can adhere to over the next 10 to 20 years. And of course, develop recommendations. And as we did that, there are 21 different recommendations that were brought forward here in front of you. A little bit about the planning process. As I mentioned at the beginning, we embarked on this journey here in July. We had an ad hoc committee consisting of a group that was put together by the city, and they have been instrumental to being able to participate in the process at different times throughout, and really do a great job in really looking at our materials, making sure that they were ready for public consumption, letting us know where we needed to dive in deeper and to take a bigger view. Look holistically at the whole plan, understanding that, you have a recently adopted comprehensive plan, and you're in the process of also updating your zoning code. And so it's kind of making sure that all documents are talking to one another and making sure that those documents are consistent. I'll touch on this real briefly, but some of the elements of this project, we initiated a corridor walking tour, a picture that you see here on the right, where we actually walked and listened to initial assumptions and suggestions that were then vetted by the online community survey. We had sent out, if you remember, as part of the Good Neighbor Festival, we set up 25 yard signs along the parade route. We had QR codes on there that people could scan and take surveys. The survey was open for about a month, consisted of about 20 questions where we could get some feelings and some overall perceptions of the corridor, things to improve upon, things to focus on. We then got into that process of writing and doing some drafting of the documents, participating with the ad hoc committee through those. We, as of March 1st, we were kind of at the point where we felt really comfortable bringing our draft number 3, which is the document that you have before you tonight, ready out there for the public to consume and to provide comment on. We put that out on the public website on March 1st. It's been open for about 3 weeks. Yesterday evening, we had an in-person open house to allow people and more opportunity to comment on the plan. And then here we are tonight at Plan Commission on March 22nd. We're getting down towards the end here with a potential recommendation, looking for a recommendation from the Plan Commission in either this meeting or a subsequent meeting here before finally being adopted by the Common Council sometime hopefully in April. So just as we developed the 399 responses, we looked at all of the answers, put them all out in front of us, and we really found out that it was kind of following, everything was falling into 4 major buckets. We have some icons here that we put out that kind of said, you know, what people were aspiring the corridor was, we wanted University Avenue to be a safe multimodal corridor for all ages and for all ability levels. We wanted to make the corridor a destination with vibrant and diverse development opportunities and taking advantage of redeveloping opportunities when the time arose and making it more dense and infilling with things that are going to support less auto-centric focus. We wanted to put an element in here about the corridor having a sense of place and having welcoming aesthetics, not just a corridor to move traffic. And we wanted to also understand that just because the traveling public is using University Avenue, we wanted to make sure that we're focusing too on access into and out of area businesses and land uses on University Avenue and providing safe and access and circulation within those areas as well. So as I mentioned before, these 4 buckets were kind of put together with the recommendations. And as I recommended, or as I said before, we came up with 21 total recommendations. And each one of these recommendations were prioritized by city staff as they're laid out in front of the report. So at first it was kind of like, let's figure out which buckets they go into. Let's put the content together. And then through the staff and the ad hoc committee, we prioritize this. And I'll get into how this prioritization took place under each of the buckets. And then also just wanted to point out that things that helped in our prioritization and our recommendations in their totality was the location, a priority for where on the corridor this is going to happen. And this will be mapped as well as shown graphically and in text form. We wanted to, as this evolved, give you some sort of cost estimate as to what some of these costs to incur some of these projects may be at. Obviously, it's different in today's dollars than it might be 10 years from now. But again, looking forward 10 to 20 years, we wanted to give you an idea if this particular thing was 50,000 or 500,000. We wanted to provide some detail on what it is we were recommending and why, giving you some best practices, some things such as FDM guidance or MUTCD guidelines, things like that, that really give you the confidence to say, like, these are backed by best practices within the industry, whether they be planning, zoning, or engineering, and then giving you some ideas for potential funding sources so that it could reduce the cost burden for the city. Each of these are mapped in specific locations along the corridor. So I'll give number 2 an example here. You'll see the number 2 shows up on several different different spots along the corridor, 3 or 4 different, 5 different times. And what that corresponds to is the crossing upgrades at signalized intersections. So the 2 in red would kind of denote where the signalized intersections would be and the upgrades that maybe we would be putting on in this particular example. Again, these are the multimodal components only. This is just for the areas that had multimodal type and recommendations and improvements. But maps like this in the report are laid out in 4 different areas. As I mentioned before, real quickly, you'll start to see these being populated. But again, the priority number up here, the recommendation of what we're trying to do, the specific background and why it was identified, where on the corridor are we potentially calling these locations out. In some cases, this is just one location. In other locations, there's multiple. We prioritize it based on the city input here. So as we have a 1 and a 2 and a 3, those will become a little bit more higher priority. As we get into 4, 5s, and 6s, those might become medium priority, and 7s, 8s, and so on would be lower priority. The cost estimate piece. So again, we give some guidance where there is crosswalks, for examples, where we know the price of installing a rapid flashing beacon or putting in some of those enhancements in today's dollars. We try to give these a single, double, or a triple dollar sign. Think of it as $0 to $50,000 as the first dollar sign, $50 to $100,000 the second dollar signs, and over 100,000. And again, in some cases, these are marked as unknown because the timing and the material costs really detail, what the cost estimates might be in today's dollars, maybe looking drastically different 10 years from now. And again, the recommendation detail the best practices and potential funding programs. I'll give you just a snapshot of what those would look like. I'll go over 4 examples, one in each of the categories, just very quickly, so you can get a flavor for what we did. One of the examples was a priority 5, but we actually explored the use of a multi-use path, kind of extending, as the city of Madison has recently put in their multi-use path that kind of connects into Allen Boulevard on the east side. What would it look like if we tried to explore some options, putting multi-use paths, expanding west and making that next logical connection forward? What we found out was, indeed, we do have space and we would have room engineering wise to fit it in. That would obviously come with a whole bunch of extra studying and other things that would need to take place, and a whole bunch of costs potentially to the city as well, with engineering studies, survey, preliminary design, final design, searching out grant and funding opportunities, things like that. So, the feasibility of this is, yes, from an engineering standpoint, it could work. As we work through something like this, we think, again, just as a reminder, 10 to 20 years from now, this might be an option. If we're truly trying to get the corridor to be more walkable and more travelable by rolling or by bike, this seems to be an option that a multi-use path would fit in there. Again, we have some, 10-foot wide multi-use paths, some ideas, some cross-section things drawn up. Anytime that we're up over 10,000 vehicles a day is kind of that threshold where we would explore multi-use paths as a separated bike and pedestrian accommodations. And then again, it's just some other funding programs that we could explore on the high end. These are certainly not all of them, just some to look into. We look into things such as the uniform building setbacks. Now, this is an area, again, like I said, the comprehensive plan has just been published in March of last year, about a year ago. We understand that there's heavy work being put in by Vanderwall as part of the zoning code rewrite. And again, putting our stamp on this plan from the standpoint of being visionary, but also wanting to make sure that our plans mesh and are talking to one another. Just an example here, as we looked at uniform building setbacks, Middleton Sport Bowl here on the south, we looked at the recently completed Kestrel apartments and their setback distances here versus the parcel right next door versus another parcel. And you can see that they're kind of just 3 examples. We wanted to set some consistency in here. And so we explored, something where we thought 20 feet from the edge of curb might be too, not set back enough. Whereas things like this might be 75 feet with parking in the front, that might be too much. So putting together some guidance as we work through these examples was something that we looked into and explored. Another example is burying overhead utility lines, right? So west of Park Street in the residential neighborhood, already a done deal, already done. And then areas east of Park Street, there's utility lines that are still in place above. Obviously looking at the priority to understand what your neighbors, the city of Madison, the city of Sun Prairie. This was just a link to a Sun Prairie article where this City of Sun Prairie is going through this endeavor right now and is understanding the investment that's needed. We have some detailed data there that we can pull and understand, what are some of the risks, when is a good opportunity to do this, along with which projects and things like that. The city staff had identified this as a high priority, something that we definitely want to look into and explore. But again, these come at a higher cost to the community, right? So something to bury overhead utility takes a lot of coordination and can be hundreds of thousands of dollars per mile to do. We put some applicable best practices, again, some funding programs in place for this as well. And finally, an example of just getting people not only along the destination, but within and circulating through the destination. Improving parking lot circulation happens at various locations throughout the corridor. And we put this in as relatively low cost options on a medium priority, areas in which we can do things like making improvements to the medians, making some pavement markings within site circulations to promote one-way traffic, promoting right in, right out, into safety as traffic increases. We're looking at 20,000 plus cars a day right now, with the growth projection shooting up all the way past 30,000 in the MPO 2050 plan. So, I mean, this is obviously a corridor that's continuing, that will continue to carry as a principal arterial automobile traffic, but ways to reduce impacts between different modes of transportation and focusing on safety. We put some, this is the Tabby and Jackson, the Middleton Sport Bowl property, just some things to notes there, areas to put, looking into angled parking, entering and taking away some of the parking spaces right in the entrance areas to give the people a chance to actually enter into the parking lot before you queue up traffic at different times and risk that rear end crash. So these are just some examples. Again, we have 21. I just gave 4 of them right there, just so you can get a flavor. But as we work through this process, again, really supported through by the ad hoc committee throughout. And this has evolved into a great opportunity for the city to make sure that the plans are talking to one another and that our investments are protected. So with that, I'll take any open discussion or opportunities for questions.
Well, to begin with, I want to say thank you to the whole SRF team and you and your associates for doing a great job. It really looks good, and no question about it. And I want to say thank you to the ad hoc committee and our staff for doing a phenomenal job. It took a lot of time, a lot of effort. It wasn't easy, but it's reaching the goalpost. And I want to say thank you to all of you. I do have a lot of questions, but I'm going to give others the opportunity before I ask. So please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question. So, okay, I don't see raised hands. I will go ahead and start then. Okay, now I see Mike Slavish. All right, Mike, and then Kurt Palson.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, again, great report. A lot of issues that were addressed. I was fortunate to have a chance to go on that walking tour back in July, and much to see along this corridor. Just a couple of comments, Paul. First of all, I know that we talk about a full range of housing in this corridor and that the need for more housing. And I think it's important to make the distinction between the types of housing, which could be townhomes, condos, apartments, some of which might be ownership, some of which might be rental, but I think also to make the distinction about housing that supports different income levels as well. And I didn't see that in the report. It may have been in there and I may have missed it, but making that distinction, I think the city of Middleton has said that, workforce affordable housing is an important piece of the pie here in terms of the type of housing we want to offer, and, making specific mention to that, especially in these areas that have, better access to transit. Clearly that's where a lot of the, maybe the more affordable housing wants to be anyway. So something maybe strengthening that language a bit.
Okay.
The other comment I had was on shared parking, and I know you guys do address that in this report. And I think it was mentioned the BMO lot, St. Bernard's as being great options. Those are vacant parking lots for a good part of the day. Can they be used for shared parking? I think that's great. Another component of that, though, as we think about increased density along this corridor, thinking about uses that pair well together from a parking standpoint, which of course would be residential and, office is the ideal pair for that. Where you might have office retail on the ground floor, the lower level floors, and then residential above, where those two are complementary uses in terms of when the parking is needed. Residential, obviously evenings and weekends, the office, sometimes retail, needing that during normal working hours when the residents are gone, and a great opportunity to share parking. Just might be another component to add to the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mike.
Mike. So next one is Kurt Palson.
Yeah, so as it won't surprise anyone, I have lots of comments, some of which I can just write up. I don't need to take all of today, but as a urban planner myself, I'm really torn about this plan because it's supposed to be a vision of the future, and yet it's layered on top of pretty much, if you had to do a urban planning textbook of the kind of one of the worst strip arterials, this might be in competition with some in the city of Milwaukee. So, almost by definition, anything we do is going to make it a little better. But as currently written, I'm going to vote against this plan because it kind of misses from the city perspective what I think is the most important issue, which is not addressed in the plan, which is why do we have to assume that University Avenue is going to be a 4-lane arterial in the future? So I guess just from the design team's perspective, how you thought about the idea that, if it's a principal arterial, it prioritizes mobility over access. Because I appreciate in the plan that you want to make it more bike friendly, pedestrian friendly. But as long as it's an arterial, it's still 2-car friendly. And that kind of means that all of the other choices that we would make kind of flow from that. So I realize this is opening a can of worms, and but I wasn't around when we redid University Avenue. I think it was wasted money on a pretty horrible arterial design, and I think I want us as a city to think about a world of the urban future that is far less car dependent, and that means not accommodating 30,000 AADT in an arterial, but making it more of a urban street than a suburban arterial. So that's kind of my main argument right now.
Anyone else? Otherwise, I'm going to start now. So please raise your hand if you have any questions. I want to say thank you to Randy for writing his comments ahead of time. So one of them is actually, I had the same thing which Kurt said. So right now it's 20,000, and I was just wondering that what will be in, what is the capacity and where it would go. And 2050, you say MPO says 30,000. So I wonder what are the consequences of increase? And Paul, this is for you. And
Okay.
What is that which we can do so that rather than going up, could it stabilize or go down? So that is the beginning. Let's go from there, and then I got more. So,
Well, I think from the, if it does stay auto-centric, right? If it really does get to 30,000 cars a day, 15,000 vehicles per day is kind of that threshold before you would expand from 2 to 4 lanes. I mean, this would be a congested 4-lane corridor at 30,000 vehicles per day. I agree with Kurt when he says that, these are just projections based on current conditions, right? So the MPO forecasts look at employment, they look at residential, they look at, housing and employment. And obviously the key to this segment, which makes it unique, is that it's a principal arterial, and principal arterials, as they're written, are meant to move traffic. And, that doesn't mean, like Kurt said, that we couldn't take an approach and say, we don't want to move traffic for the city of Middleton. That's something that we could explore. However, you know, obviously when it's been JT'd into the city of Middleton, people want to get from the Beltline to downtown Madison. They're going to go right through the community. You know, so just providing, you know, that piece. But to answer your question, Mayor, I think at 30,000 cars in year 2045, or at some point where that would be based off today's projections, today's future projections of where development may occur based on land uses, it would be a congested corridor at 30,000 cars per day. Now, just to give you some perspective, we are already at that threshold east of Allen Boulevard. So just to give you some idea
Wow.
of what that would look like, going through the residential part west of Park Street, we are at 30,000 in today's present date, you know, east of Allen, between there and Whitney Way.
So is there anything which this as a city we could do to make sure that that doesn't happen? Anything mayor, city council, all of us together do?
You know, I would look at it first from a traffic circulation standpoint, citywide. You know, you have to start there and kind of say, what are your arterial roadways, if any? Where are you going to be your main east and west and north and south arteries? University forever, it seems like, has been that. That doesn't mean in the future, you know, since it's JT'd into the city of Middleton, I mean, you could do everything from exploring reducing speed limits through that segment. You could make it a walkable, I mean, you could make it as like State Street if you wanted to. There's options out there. You know, to be honest, I'm surprised a little bit to hear Kurt's comments, just from a perspective, but I mean, he brings up some great points. We just hadn't heard that yet from anybody throughout the 8-9 month process, that we'd want to explore it to the point of not making it auto-centric at all. It was more about making it more walkable, more bikeable, increasing opportunities as our residents of all abilities, our aging population still can get to places, still promote maybe connecting into that BRT in the future. But again, it gets to a point where traffic just hits that breaking point, right? Where it gets so congested, people are going to go find alternate routes.
So I'd like to get your opinion. You remember that Park and Gammon used to be 4-lane, so we made that 2-lane. It still works. So I don't know what is the traffic on that one. So you think that we could envision making this university as 2-lane? And then of course, all the turning lanes and whatever.
Ooh, put me on the spot, or somebody else want to jump in there? Abby or Mark's on the call too.
I can answer that. I mean, like we've seen in Madison, like Park and Gammon in Middleton, and then like Odana Road, they recently redid that to be just like it's 3 lanes, 2 each side, and the like median in between. So there are, I don't know what the, you know, the average daily, you know, however many cars are on those lanes, but you know, those are options that Madison has been proposing, and it was just not something that we had heard, as Paul said, while we did like the surveys and all of that. I mean, we were just trying to balance, you know, some people were saying more parking on University, and a lot of people were saying no more parking. So it came up to, you know, kind of compromising between those two. So yeah, if we wanted to do something like that, like on Odana or on Park Street, that would probably have to be a study on its own, just to see if that could happen.
This is Mark Opitz. I could just add, when we did Gammon Road, that the traffic volume was around 12 or 13,000, as I recall, maybe even a little bit less than that. And Odana Road also, I'm sure, is under 20,000. So University Avenue, I admire the goal of reducing the 4-lane arterials in the city. I just don't know if the threat of an example of where a 2-lane carries that much traffic, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't strive for that, if that's the goal for having a more pedestrian friendly corridor. That's really what we are after. So the traffic volumes are definitely different. It's a different level of traffic volume on University than Gammon Road.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Next one is Abby, then Kurt, and then then Elder Ramsey, and then Gretchen. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, as someone who crossed University Avenue on foot 2 times a day for 10 years to get to and from work, I love the idea of what Kurt is saying. Even in the image that Paul showed of someone walking across University with a stroller, I was scared for that person and their child because it is scary to cross University Avenue as a pedestrian. So I understand the sentiment of, you know, if you look at improving bike paths and design standards and infilling and adding more transit, I mean, we can make a lot of those improvements, but it is still going to be, you know, a roadway that carries 20,000 cars a day and that is pretty hostile to pedestrians and bicyclists without, you know, a major change. That being said, I think the residents would love, especially the residents who live near university, would absolutely love to see the city do something to, you know, reduce the lanes. But I think that the business community is probably where you would get the most pushback for a major change like that. I'm thinking back to when the road was reconstructed recently, and I remember that there were quite a few businesses that were opposed to even adding a center median that would limit access in and out of their sites. And ultimately at that time, the Plan Commission recommended no changes to the cross section. They just kept it exactly as it was before. Where I think we might be able to make a really good case for some improvements like that is if we are able to get bus rapid transit and look at, you know, in the future having a dedicated lane, because nothing like this will work unless we are supplementing it with really, really high quality transit. And so far, that has not been a real high priority for the city to be able to increase the operating costs to budget more funds to get that transit service. So that's all I was going to say.
Thank you, Abby. Next one is Kurt Palson, but I can tell you that when we came here in 1982, it was a sleepy road, so it wasn't what it is now. So it has changed during those years. So
Yeah,
anyway, so Kurt.
I suppose I would say to Paul that maybe the reason you didn't hear this is everyone's still locked into a old planning paradigm, or maybe I'm just getting cranky in my old age, but yeah, I don't think, I mean, as you know, I'm an urban planning professor, so I'm sorry to get theoretical, but for 80 years, we've screwed up the American city because we've designed it around the automobile with the idea that we have to accommodate vehicle flow and vehicle traffic at design speeds. And at some point in time, we just have to say that that's stupid and wrong. And we've done that for 80 years. And the point is to design cities for people, not for cars. So if we just start removing lanes of traffic, who cares where the cars go, right? We want to design for and have a vision for a world where the automobile is not the dominant form of transit in that corridor. So my vision is one lane of traffic on each side at 25 miles an hour with traffic lights deliberately designed to stop traffic, and then BRT with bike lanes down the middle. But I realize that I'm on my way out the door and I'm a cranky old guy. So that's just the design perspective, is why do we have to, as a city, as the mayor said, why do we have to accommodate all this regional traffic that goes through? If we make University Avenue really hard to drive, people won't get off the Beltline and go down University Avenue. They'll come all the way on the Beltline, maybe to Park Street or somewhere else to go downtown Madison. And I think the MPO is wrong because they're assuming that people are still going to drive at the same rate in 2045 that they will today. And I think we know that the planet can't take that. So, okay, my sermon's over, sorry.
Yeah, I think the beauty of it is earlier it was owned by the county, city owns it now. So there is a big difference. So the next one is Elder Ramsey and then Commissioner Gretchen.
I just had a question. When we took it over from the county, were there any design parameters that they put on it for us? I mean, were we locked into doing it the way we did it?
I
Abby?
don't think that we were, no. I think actually there was a recommendation that came out of Public Works Committee that proposed a cross-section that actually looked pretty similar to what Madison approved east of Allen Boulevard, which has far more restrictions on access. They really limited, turning movements and cutting across the center lane, and they have a center median, and they have, more trees and more streetscaping amenities. So I don't think that there were limitations at the time on what the design of the roadway could look like. I do think that even with the jurisdictional transfer, there are still some limitations that remain around if the city were to relinquish some of the right of way. I think that there is a process still that we have to go through to get their approval. I remember it came up with the Scooters Coffee sign recently, where we thought that because of the jurisdictional transfer, we could accommodate that, but we had to work with them on that. I don't think that there would be any limitations on a future redesign, though.
My other comment is, if we were to decide to redesign it at some point, and it's an admirable goal, but if we were to decide to do that, you'd have to have a huge study on where that traffic would go, because are we just pushing it from University Avenue to Elmwood? When we've had construction downtown, we've pushed all the traffic on South Avenue, and that's become kind of a thoroughfare. So, I mean, it would have to, I don't know that it's feasible just to squeeze all the traffic off without expecting that it's not going to go into residential areas. Then it's a very complex issue.
Excellent point, Elder Ramsey. I was just hoping people keep on going on the belt line, but they got to go somewhere. So, so that it just you got everything start with thinking. So with conversation. So there's a lot to be done before it could be implemented. Commissioner Gretchen.
I guess I mirror a lot of what other people have been saying, but I think we have limitations based on the fact that we have two big lakes right in the way of where a lot of people need to be going. And University Avenue is also that connector from the western suburbs like Cross Plains, because that's Highway 14. And I also don't feel good about pushing traffic through neighborhoods, because that just makes it more dangerous for kids that play in the street, which is, something that you want to preserve in a smaller town. I think that one way to help ease future traffic would be to make at least our community have greater access to public transportation. And so in order to do that, to use University as a corridor with more buses, we're going to need to be able to allow our pretty spread out community of Middleton to get to those buses. And I haven't seen anything in the plans about how we get people in the neighborhoods to the buses. And so that's a component that really needs to be there. If we want people from Middleton to be able to go to work on campus, they need to be able to get to the bus. So that's, I think, one of the more critical issues to slowing the traffic.
That's a great point, Gretchen, and we are working on that in any case. So there's one ad hoc committee starting the work there. So any other questions? I still have a lot more to ask. Kurt Palson.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up with and share my agreement with what Gretchen was saying. But are we interested in making transit more viable? Or are we really interested in a long-term vision which induces a modal shift so that people don't use the automobile for most of their trips? Because one is designed to kind of lessen the impact of the automobile, and the other is to actually design a sustainable city so that people can make a good percentage of their trips and they don't need an automobile. And I think the research is clear that if you want to get people to bike and walk and take transit, it's not just making it nice and convenient and free. It's about making driving expensive and hard to do. And I realize this is kind of a radical paradigm shift, but I guess I just want to keep pushing on this issue that, you know, if you design an arterial to accommodate traffic, you will get traffic. And the only way to really induce people to take public transit is to make driving a lot harder to do. And that means slowing it down, enforcing traffic laws, making parking hard to get to. And I realize that's not the vision that a lot of people expressed in the public meetings, because they're kind of used to the way things are, which is it's a very suburban oriented arterial with parking in for the front and kind of lots of driveways. And it's just a, you know, I guess to me, it's a different vision issue that I want it to be like an urban street, not a suburban arterial. And I realize that might be a minority view in the city, but so the reason I would vote against the plan is not that you guys didn't do good work and listen, it's just that it doesn't reflect the vision I think we should have for the corridor. But Mark and Abby tell me my vision's kind of cranky and radical right now. So,
And
you know,
that's
if you design a city for cars, you get more cars. If you design a city for making cars hard to use, you get fewer cars. I think the research is pretty clear on that across the world. So that's just, I'll stop now.
So, Kurt, that's a good point. It's always good to have a diverse viewpoint, and the gasoline price is already doing some of the work. And you know, we are working on finding a circulator for the Middleton. That is, you will see. Well, anyway, so we are working on some of the things which likely would have a huge impact. So I don't know how long would it be, but we are in the process. We'll see where it goes. So, Commissioner Gretchen.
I guess my comment would be, so my husband is Belgian and we spend a lot of time in Europe for extended periods. And so shopping there is necessarily convenient on foot because every city center is closed to traffic, but every city center is surrounded by a ring that traffic can park at and then access the core on foot. And there are shops, butcher shops, cheese shops, fish shops, you know, fresh fruits and vegetable shops, night shops, your convenience stores, like totally packed in the city. And that's something we don't have here. So, and I don't think the zoning can fix the fact that every time that there's a development, it's 3 stories of apartments on top of 1 floor of tax prep, nail salon, and a coffee shop. Like that doesn't help me be a pedestrian. And so, I mean, we can't fix the American mindset or make developers put what citizens need to be pedestrians in a city by changing the amount of access that the cars have. I think it would be great if we did have like a larger developed downtown that was more walkable and had more kinds of shops. And I like the kind of development that started to happen, but we need a lot more of that in a lot more neighborhoods, because I'm the only one that walks to the grocery store in my neighborhood. It's 1 mile. There's not a sidewalk that goes straight there. I have to like weed perch all the way through the neighborhood, and not many people are willing to do that. So we need more of those types of things in order to make Kurt's amazing. I love your radical plan. I just don't know if it works here quite yet.
So Gretchen, I was researching United States at one of the universities it was called West Germany at the time. So I know how the European cities are. So I did have a car, but I didn't really have to use it. So you could just walk. So whether you were going to the city center, they have research institutes, the university is spread out all over. So it was, you know, the European cities are very different. I mean, they're vertical rather than spread out. So I don't think, you know, we can reshape well, anyway, so great point. Commissioner Schaefer, and then Commissioner Bruce.
You're on mute, John.
Thank you. Sorry. I just want to support what Gretchen's saying and maybe be a bit of a rain cloud on Kurt. That Kurt, you keep using the word planning and planning this and planning that. The fact is the city's there and been planned long ago in the wrong way. And to plan University Avenue with the idea that you can't unplan what's already in place, be it good or bad, to me says it's a great vision, but I think that we have to look at the reality is that we can't change the whole city to adapt it to a let's change University Avenue kind of mindset. So, you know, I agree with you on concept, but I think in practicality, I think that we'd be spinning wheels trying to go down there. So that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Schaefer. And the next one is Commissioner Randy Bruce.
Kurt, first of all, I got to say that your comments were a surprise to me as well as they were to perhaps Paul, but they're well founded. I think your comments are very well founded. As this discussion's been going on, I have to admit that the part of the reason that the plan is as it is because everybody does assume University Avenue is a 4-lane arterial. And it's an assumption that is, you know, obviously based on our experience. That being said, I have to agree with many of the commissioners here that we have to deal with the current reality, at least in the near term. I'd love to have recommendations within the plan that would talk about University Avenue transitioning to something other than arterial. I think that would be really valid. And but I also want the plan to work here for the next 10 years or 20 years. We're going to have a lot of redevelopment that's going to be occurring. I think we have to address that that redevelopment and have a plan for that. I don't personally. It's hard for me to envision University Avenue going to 2 or 3 lanes and plus a bus lane, or I just don't see that happening in the near term. Not near enough to help us plan for the growth that's going to come.
Thank you, Commissioner Bruce. So I'm going to start with my questions now. So any other questions by the other commissioners? You have any? Okay, so let's begin with, you know, I like the pedestrian safety is very, very important. And I think, I know you have tried to address this, but anything more you could do? You got the marked crosswalks and some of those things, and you know, you have tried to do something, but that should be high priority. And I know you in your priorities, you have it as one of the high priorities. So now, one of the things which could change things is that you did say we have a space from Allen Boulevard to Branch Street to have a 10 feet or 10-foot wide path there, which will make a huge difference. Now, is there any way that we could actually bring it up to Parmenter Street, or is there we mark, Daphne, is there any right of way or anything which we could do that it could come to the Parmenter?
Only if you took a lane out. There's not enough right of way. There's right now the terrace is like in front of the Kestrel. I think that terrace width is only about 1 foot.
Oh,
That's correct. And Abby, that's you know, we looked at that, looking at trying to take it as far as we possibly could. And, you know, with the 10-foot path just fitting within the current right of way, really, you know, it's consistent with the comp plan as well. That was actually brought up and published into the comp plan that people were under the assumption of like, there just isn't a feasible in the current condition of the University Avenue, right? Without making drastic changes or, with the volumes being over 10,000 and kind of meeting that ADT standard. It really just does stop at Branch Street, or maybe just a little bit around the triangle there, a little bit to the west.
So we couldn't really, the front yards are not really big enough that we could have any easement or right of way from the homeowners, right? Okay, all right. So that's not going to happen unless we take out one of the lanes, which isn't going to happen anytime soon. So the other thing which I have always wanted, and everybody else in the city would too, is the green space. So I know that there isn't much of it along the University Avenue. So there probably will be some possibility. And when you look at the plan, I don't really see much of it. So is there anything which could be done even to have a small gathering spaces and some green space somewhere? It makes a huge difference in the quality of life. And is there anything which Paul or anybody we could do to make that happen?
Well, I'll just first start by saying, we kind of looked at the areas within the terrace widths and the existing terraces as a way to kind of separate bike, pedestrian, and automobile traffic, just to kind of make the pedestrians feel a little bit more separated and more comfortable. Like I mentioned this yesterday and to the open house, but there's studies galore that basically said just planting trees along a terrace really gives that sense of comfort for, different ages, different modes, different people and types. As far as, we did look at opportunities on a high level just to expand terrace widths. I think one of the things very early in our proposal was, the idea of taking these 1 and 2 foot spaces and eliminating them completely. And is there any opportunities to expand from 5 to 6 feet or 8 feet so that we can put in benches or artwork? But, as far as those full gathering spaces that you refer to, Mayor, I think those are kind of designated to areas like the triangle areas, maybe near Parmenter, or some areas along east of, I guess it would be kind of near Lakeview Street and Gateway area down there.
So talking about that triangle, so there's that road or driveway there. So is it possible to make that, why is that road, is that required or needed? Could that be a green space there, gathering place?
I looked at this area a long time ago with Derek, and Derek Hungness, and kind of tracing through the history and his being a longtime Middleton resident and things like that, for all of the different things over the years that triangle has been possibly explored as, right? It's obviously a gateway into the corridor from Allen. It's from Branch Street. There's opportunities there in the future for being a great area for connecting to bus rapid transit. There obviously that cul-de-sac is there for Walgreens deliveries and larger vehicles kind of circulating in and around it. We talked about public art spaces, the big Middleton M that's located there, and opportunities for public art. I think there is. I think there's potential there for sure.
So that's owned by the city, I would think. It's not, so there should be some possibility to do it. So I'm also looking at the gathering places, not just the green spaces, and it could be even not necessarily just along the University Avenue, but it could be a block away. I know you didn't look at those perhaps, and or did you? So you need some gathering places as well. So did you look into it, or you think there's any merit in those?
We didn't really explore areas along Elmwood or Franklin Avenue as potential gathering spaces. Again, I think about areas up kind of that park area by the elementary school as a potential area, the Middleton M and that triangle as being an area. But yeah, we didn't look at, areas kind of extending on Elmwood or Franklin too closely there, west of Branch Street.
So now, when you looked at the traffic fatalities, we had one on Elmwood. So I don't know whether you looked at the Park and Elmwood intersection. It's of course a block away. You do mention it, but did you think of doing anything to, address the issues along Elmwood there, or what could be done? Or I don't know. I read through this, but I didn't see anything.
Where was the location again,
The
Mayor? I'm sorry.
Elmwood, you have, there was
Elmwood.
only one fatality.
Yep.
That was on Elmwood. And
Right.
then when you look at all those where you have the accidents, it's again, I don't remember exactly now. So you got one of it's Parmenter and University, and then Park Lawn and University, and then along Elmwood. So is there anything which you have proposed or anything which we could do, especially that one, to handle it?
Just for safety enhancements?
Oh, well, pedestrian and safety both. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
At the intersections there, not as I recall, that pedestrian fatality was not at an intersection, or it wasn't
Yeah.
labeled at an intersection.
yeah. No, it
Yeah, and
was.
so, right. So no, I mean, not specifically to any of the intersections on Elmwood.
Okay. Now the last one, or one of the last one is, I love landscaping, I love flowers, and I love art. So those are three things which make the Middleton as a place, great place to live, and that's the quality of life issue. So I have looked through, you talk about trees, but there's a hardly, I mean, there are hardly any flowers anywhere along the University Avenue. For heaven's sake, I mean, this is really unacceptable. You go to the West Coast, and we're going to visit our daughter in about 10 days. And it's given it's Marine County, it's different, but you see flowers all around. Even when I went to graduate school 50 years ago, or a long time ago in Southern California, I mean, there are just, so what is going on here? I mean, what are you going to do to make this, you want to make this vibrant. So that's one way, to do something here, that this is, people love flowers, people like trees. And I know you are limited by some of those terrace widths, but this is also an opportunity to see that where you could have wider terraces. You have wider terraces between Allen and Branch, at least. So what are we going to do about it? I mean, we can't address the number of cars right now, at least, but there are other things which we can address to make it really vibrant place where people would say, yeah, University Corridor, and I don't know, Abby, and looking into art things. I mean, if you want to make a place vibrant and a destination, and well, where do you have the art? Well, you got the love your neighbor on one of the pizza places. Well, this is good, so, but that's absolutely, well, I don't know if I want to use the word essential, but it's absolutely wonderful to have, because I think there are a lot of people who would rather have, be able to afford a lot of other things. So I can't use the word essential, but it is a very important part of a component of quality of life. So, so that's anything related to the, landscaping, especially flowers, that would be absolutely wonderful. So I have two hands raised here, Commissioner Kurt Palson and then Commissioner Randy Bruce.
Yeah, and feel free to cut me off. I could go all night on this. I wanted to follow up on the traffic safety and the pedestrian issue. And I'm wondering if whoever's driving the bus could pull back up the, like if you look at page 39, which is the uncontrolled crossing upgrades. There you go. Thanks, Daphne. I guess I'd like to hear a little more of your thinking on this and what sort of enhancements, because there's a part of me that says that currently, as an urban arterial, the fact that we painted crosswalks at uncontrolled or unsignalized intersections is almost a cruel joke, because most times of the day, a pedestrian should not cross at an unsignalized intersection. And so, you know, I'm not even sure that the RRFBs would be enough to stop traffic there without some sort of pedestrian island. Or, you know, there's a part of me that thinks, can we signalize 1 or 2 additional intersections? Or should we consider disconnecting some of those unsignalized intersections from University Avenue, just make them dead ends, right? To kind of, so maybe not Park Lawn Place, but that might be a good place for a traffic signal. So I guess part of the question is, why can't we disconnect or dead end unsignalized intersections, or what can we do to actually make pedestrian crossing at uncontrolled areas safe? Because, you know, let's be honest, the RRFBs, not a lot of people are going to stop on University Avenue at the time when, you know, I have kids in the high school, and, you know, the high school has a policy and the city around the high school has this policy that you can only park if you have a permit. Well, you know, a lot more kids drive than have permits, so they park on the other side. So maybe we want to impose permits over there too, maybe not. Anyway, can you talk a little bit more about?
Yeah, I guess there's 2 things that I would just remind and kind of say, right? So again, the uncontrolled crossing upgrades that we have here, I think in order for them to be really successful, 2 things need to happen. Number 1, enforcement, right? We would have to, you know, if we're going to put in something and invest in an RRFB or something similar to the picture here on the screen, you know, it acts like a traffic signal already. That's the point. Is you for those that want an example, right outside Madison Memorial High School on Gammon, you know, you press the button, it flickers yellow, and you cross, and to different degrees of success, right? Like, you know, you have a 16-year-old new driver, he just zips right through, or the left lane stops and the right lane keeps going, and it's like, oh gosh, you take your own life into your hands, right? But enforcement goes a long way on that, number 1. And, you know, the other part of it too is, I mean, the biggest key on this whole corridor, this is not for a single location. We have to do further study. We have to understand what the pedestrians are doing now, get pedestrian counts, get bicycle counts, get an understanding of where people are going. This isn't in itself going to be a solution until we really fully understand where the traffic's coming, where it's coming from, the pedestrian traffic coming from the schools to the schools, across University or down University. So, I mean, I know that's not a great answer for probably what you want to hear, but I think those are 2 really important concepts in uncontrolled areas where you don't have maybe marked crosswalks, or people might be just going outside and going, cool, I made it through the last traffic signal, I'm going back up 45 miles an hour now instead of following the speed limits, and I didn't know that was coming.
Yeah, and so one of the reasons I bring that up is, you know, in my work, I did a safe routes to school for City of Monona, and we stood out there and we did those traffic counts when school is letting out near the high school, and you just panic every minute you watch it because there's so much near death, and that's at a signalized intersection. So I know people who try to cross that, you know, at 8-10 in the morning when, you know, before school starts. We are very lucky that an accident has not yet happened. Right?
And you see it on 151 at East High School the last
Yep.
few years. Someone has been killed there. And, you know, that's unfortunately like a horrible piece of when you're at Mineral Point and Gammon Road for Madison Memorial High School, or you're at University Avenue, real close to it at Middleton, or on East Washington if you're at, you know, or Madison West High School too. I mean, there's traffic along all those roads. And
Is there any design principles that exist that really do more to slow traffic than just an RRFB? Whether that's rumble strips, whether that's other design things to really, because one of the things I'm concerned about is RRFBs give a false sense of security that you push the button and you assume traffic's going to stop. But even around Park, near where the on the back end of the pool, you're turning that corner, there's an RRFB cutting across the Conservancy. And almost every day that I drive by there, you see people almost get hit on there because traffic's whipping through there. So I guess my concern is we need something a little more, I guess, engineering and traffic calming rather than just an RRFB. If we're gonna want people to cross at uncontrolled intersections, otherwise remove the crosswalks and say, we really don't want you to cross there. Go down another block to the signalized intersection, which maybe pedestrians won't do either. I see Randy has a question.
Yeah. So Kurt, just to answer your question, so randomly I have checked some of those RFPs, and when I have checked them, at various places along Gammon Road, they work very well. Close to that Conservancy, which was put there only about 6 months or a year ago, on that Park Street, right north of the high school. It works. When I have watched there, I would just stand there and watch. It has worked pretty well. And the one on High Point Road, close to the north side school, that works pretty well too. But I haven't really, I have checked only a few times. So, but there is a good point that there are some people that are just so rushing and may not stop. But I have found that people in Middleton, that if they see the people are somebody standing and sometimes I didn't even press that flashing light, they stop. So which is really great. So.
But on an arterial with 30,000 AADT, that's a different bat.
No, I haven't done on the University Avenue, and I don't think I'm about to. So.
And Kurt, to your point, I think why that is scary is because University Avenue is a regional carrier of volumes. You don't have a cross collector street where it's mostly Middleton residents that understand that, yes, I'm coming up the hill by Cromery High School towards there's another high school there, and you're kind of you don't have that corridor knowledge. So I mean, you may bring up a good point, for sure.
I mean, I've driven by West and Memorial plenty of times, when they're passing and there's RRFBs and cops and crossing guards, and still people go zipping through because it's a 4-lane arterial. So.
And to be full disclosure on this, and Daphne and Abby, I think you guys each got to meet Chris as part of our team. Chris resigns, and he's our safe routes to school expert out of the city of Minneapolis. And he, brings all of these cost estimates, brings this forward. And, Mitch has, worked many years in Seattle, Washington area. Maybe there's some examples out in the Seattle area that they're doing out in Washington. But speaking for the options that we went through in the best practices, the WSDOT and FDM and MnDOT MUTCD guidelines, really that's about the highest it goes is the RRFB.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Mayor, for everyone's benefit, MUTCD is the Manual on Uniform Traffic Controlled Devices.
Yep.
It's
sorry.
Yeah.
Not talking to you, Kurt. I'm sorry.
It's planner geek speak. Yeah.
Well, I think I know it. We have done working with Sean, some of those things, that's MUTC is always there. So Abby, as far as I know, there are no RFBs along the University Avenue, which I can remember. There was a signalized lights, and we have no. So that's true, isn't it?
Yeah, the one that I can think of that's on the most similar situation is the one on Century Avenue That's it's not at a signalized intersection. It's between Allen Boulevard and Highland Way at a mid-block crossing.
Oh, there
There's
is
a
one?
bus stop.
There's an RFP,
on
it's
the
on
s-
Century Avenue and Rolling in Valley Ridge Road.
Thank
It's where
you.
it's where the
Okay.
Dollar General store is.
Oh, okay, so that's a new one then, right? Or,
Well, no, we
3-4
put
years
that
ago.
in about 6 years ago, 5 years ago.
6 years.
okay. So I guess I haven't tested that out and not about to, so, okay. So Commissioner Paulson, you're done?
Yeah, for now.
Okay, okay, Commissioner Randy Bruce.
I wanted to get back to your comment, Mayor, about green space. You know, there are, assuming that the University Avenue remains 4 lanes, there are many areas where the terrace widths are quite restricted. We only have, you know, in some cases, 1 or 2 feet of terrace, you know, the green space between the sidewalk and the curb. And I think we need to take a look at the possibility of if not gaining more right-of-way space, perhaps having a plan to allow or provide for that sidewalk to be shifted into private property by easement to gain some more green space, primarily for pedestrian safety, but also for the aesthetics, to give us some room for planting of trees, to help cool the sidewalk and the street. So I did make a suggestion that occur. I'd like to see if that's you know, obviously that's a longer term plan, but as the avenue does redevelop, I think we have opportunities to do that. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Randy. I think that's wonderful. Well, I'm going to be repeating that, but you know, that is a big part of quality of life. So Commissioner Gretchen?
I wanted to second Kurt Paulson's thoughts on the uncontrolled crossing upgrades and add a little bit more content. I feel that my experience over the years, both living in Madison and being more of the pedestrian side of that, and then moving to Middleton and going through the Allen Boulevard crossing every day, I definitely don't support the idea of uncontrolled crossings being added to University. It creates unpredictability for all parts of the users, the people crossing the crosswalk and the drivers, and it increases the chance of rear end accidents. And especially with the 4 lanes of traffic, it's very difficult for pedestrians to see if there's another car coming that's not stopping when the car in the closer lane has stopped. I don't let my kids cross at those, and if we need more controlled crossings, I would suggest that we look at what Madison did down on campus, which is to add an actual traffic light with a very, very wide, probably 50-foot wide crossing for students and bikes to get from one side to the other where there's heavy pedestrian traffic. Now, we wouldn't need it to be an enormous pathway, but to just put in an actual traffic light that would stop traffic. That can happen just for pedestrians. I think that our lives are valuable enough, even if we're not in a car, to just put in a traffic light for pedestrians in a crosswalk. And I would not support uncontrolled crossings on University Avenue.
I don't think that's likely to happen, Gretchen. So that's, yeah, anyway, that isn't going to happen.
Can we ask
Yeah,
Paul,
sure, go ahead.
are pedestrian activated red lights allowable by WISDOT?
Yeah. So I know that there's contention there and there's some updates that are there. But as of recently, there was a discussion that we had, is it included in the latest FTM version? And it's something, I know that, you know, it had something to do, Kurt, you probably know it better than me, but with like TAPCO and some of the supply things that they had to be able to actually do it. So as of the time of this plan, when it was originally at its original conception, it was still good. But it does change by the month, and some of these things might not be able to happen right away, or some of them may come back into once their supply things are met. And I think that was a supplier issue, that they weren't able to like support all of the different types of infrastructure that went into it. And so I would have to talk to Chris about that a little bit more in detail. But yeah, you bring up a really good point, because I know that was maybe a temporary change that they were making.
Right, and just to translate, FDM is the Facilities Development Manual. That's it. We can't do a traffic control device that's not approved by WSDOT. And I know that other states do allow what's called the pedestrian activated red light. So it could stop traffic literally in all directions. Most of our uncontrolled intersections have a stop sign on the cross traffic. So I don't know if we'd put a stop sign there as well. I mean a signal there as well. If you signalize, you have to signalize all four corners, right? So, but I would agree with Gretchen that we should put some sort of recommendation like that in the plan. If it's feasible, a pedestrian activated red light, where so basically if you want to cross the street, you push a button. It doesn't just activate the flasher like the RRFB, but it literally activates a red light to stop traffic, because cars are much more used to seeing a red light that means stop rather than a flashing beacon of yellow. But I appreciate that, Gretchen.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Mark Opitz, you had your hand up. You have something?
Yeah. I was simply going to say I lost my connection for half a minute. So if you said this, I apologize. But isn't a Hawk system, Paul, the same sort of thing that we're talking about? What Madison has, the HAWK system, isn't that what Kurt's bringing up?
Yes. Yeah, and
Okay.
that's the system that I think there was the supply chain issue too.
Okay. All right. I missed that then. Sorry.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, need some sort of motion. Okay, Randy, Bruce.
In fairness to the rest of the ad hoc committee, I'd like to have this referred back to the ad hoc committee. The committee hasn't met since since this last draft has been put together and the appendices put together. I'd like to have them have an opportunity to discuss it and provide input before coming back to the Plan Commission for further action.
Okay, need a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to refer it back to the ad hoc committee, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. All right, we are on to the next item now. This is a 5-year street improvement plan, and Abby.
Yes, this is the 5-year plan for streets that Public Works puts together each year to show their work plan for road reconstructions and resurfacing. And this was recommended for approval by the Public Works Committee, and subsequently, actually the day after the Public Works Committee met, our staff discussed an alternative, and it's just making one change. It's swapping in or moving up Elmwood Avenue, the segment that's highlighted with the orange circle, moving that to 2024, and then moving Elm Lane back to 2027. And the reason for the change is that the downtown streets are going to be reconstructed in 2023. The Stone Horse Green is getting reconstructed, or is getting constructed in 2022. And if we were to move that segment of Elmwood up, it would only be 1 year later, so that we could finish off the entirety of the downtown before moving to a different part of the city. So this is supported by our public works staff and our planning staff, and our recommendation is for recommending approval to Common Council.
So Abby, from what I understand, this will be a TIF money, right? So I don't think you need to swap because at least I was told, I was talking to Mike and I thought it was supposed to be done along with the, the Stonehorse Green and when those other roads are supposed to be done, because this was within a half a mile. Did something change? So that was my understanding of it.
No, the area that's being done with TIF is kind of the in the shape of a Y. So it's Parmenter Street from University Avenue south to Terrace, and then the streets immediately surrounding the Stonehorse Green. The area that's in the orange bubble between Parmenter and Middleton Street is a resurfacing, so that's considered maintenance. It's not a full reconstruction. It's also, it gets to be more residential on that street, so that section is not being proposed for TIF funding.
Okay, so there's some change there. Well, sounds good to me. This is, yeah, this area is pretty bad. Actually, the whole Elm Wood is bad. So I would like if there was any way we could have a little bit more funding for the roads. I'm sure Ellen Ramsey will support it because we still have bad roads. So anyway, that's fine with me. So, but I would like, yeah, more money. I think we need to fix some of the roads. Even, for example, the Stonefield is now in 26, 27. And I thought the whole Elmwood would be done in 23. So now it's actually pushed back. And I know the Canyon and some of the other streets are pushed back too, which is really not as good. So, okay, if you have any questions or comments, I need a motion to approve.
So just a question with regard to additional funding. Do we hear any words about whether some of the Federal Infrastructure Act dollars will flow through to local road improvements through the state? And if so, would we be ready to kind of move some of these projects further up if the dollars are available? Now that would also require our state legislator to decide to actually send more money back to local governments for local roads repair, which they've been loath to do over these many years. So.
Well, if we get that money, that will be great. So one of the big things which the public works has been pushing me and others is that they don't have enough staff to handle it if there was even more money. So I think coming the referendum, we probably have to provide some more staffing to the public works. So that has been, so Kurt, you're absolutely right. I have pushed them and they just say, well, we don't have the staff to handle it. But if we get that money, maybe we can get both staff and staff would have to come through the other sources, but certainly we would use that money. Abby, do you have any inkling or somebody else does? Mark, Daphne?
I'm not up to speed on whether there are any programs to be applying for anytime soon. Obviously, if there are any opportunities that we're aware of, our department's always willing to help pitch in to prepare grant proposals, but we can't help manage road projects, so we aren't gonna be able to help with that.
Yeah.
I can check in with Sean at our meeting tomorrow morning to see if there are any funding opportunities that he's aware of, and we can send an email out and let you know what we find out.
And that will be great. I think, well, anyway, you know my view, so I'll be repeating it. So. Okay, any other questions or comments? I don't see any raised hands, but I need a motion to approve. I guess that's.
I'll make that motion, recommend approval to council.
Okay, Finance Committee and Council. Okay, all right.
Which one are you?
The
which one is your motion for?
For the staff proposed changes to the Public Works draft.
At this, okay, go ahead.
If I mean, that's something we can discuss is whether, I know you're on Public Works, so the question is whether they've seen this proposed change.
No, I'm not on Public Works.
Oh, okay.
But
Did you used to
yes,
be?
the road.
Yeah.
It's Elder Ramsey's road.
And the road
yeah,
is in your district. Yeah.
I have that road, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be perfectly straightforward. I'm going to vote no for the staff's recommendation at this juncture in time. Because my road is been this way for a long time, so.
So Elder Ramsey, I haven't walked that road lately, but I can't, it's too late tonight, but I probably will walk very soon, so.
This is
Before
Elm
it,
Lane you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Elm
Yeah,
Lane,
it's
off of Church Avenue.
Elm Lane, it's really bad. It's
Really bad.
really
And
bad.
it's been put off before, and Kurt is correct. It's really bad.
I would suggest you make a motion at council to add that in and add the money for it. I think you'd probably get support.
so you want to make
something
that
similar is
motion?
gonna happen.
So Elder Ramsey, you want to make that motion?
To recommend to council that we put both in.
Yeah,
Well, we'll have to go through and do a rebudget. Do whatever motion you
no,
want. to make, and when it
no,
gets to council-
it's a 5-year plan. There's a, you know,
Well,
the money will be
but
found next year. So it's not this year, it's next year's budget, so.
The main reason that the plan commission looks at the street improvement plan is not to micromanage the finance or the public works department. It's
Right.
mainly to coordinate with other TIF and infrastructure projects that planning is doing. And so this is a staff recommendation from the planning staff, right, Abby?
It is, yeah. I think I was not at the Public Works Committee meeting where they discussed this, but my understanding is that this idea with changing these two streets in their order was not discussed, but there was quite a bit of discussion, I believe, about a desire to move Elmwood Avenue up. And I think it's because the road is in really rough shape for one. It's going to now be, adjacent to streets that have been recently repaved. And so it's going to be even more noticeable. But also there has been some recent discussion about some potential safety improvements along Elmwood Avenue. There was a joint Public Works and Ped Bike Transit Committee meeting where there were quite a few neighbors asking about some improvements because there were two incidents involving a pedestrian and a car. So, well, actually one time the pedestrian was walking in a crosswalk and the other time on a bicycle. And so I think that was another, in my opinion, that was another benefit of changing the order, is that I thought if we were able to work with the neighborhood on a tactical urbanism project, which would be maybe some temporary traffic circles or something like that, some temporary traffic calming measures this year, then that may enable us to design those into the road sooner. I will say I mentioned that as being a reason why I supported the change to our public works director, and he felt that it was mixing two different things. In his opinion and his staff's opinion, the benefit of this was more around the alignment of trying to get the whole downtown area done, and he didn't really feel that it was that was a compelling reason to move this street ahead of Elm Lane. But I think that nobody thought of it during the Public Works Committee meeting. So I don't know how they would have felt about it, but it needs to be moved forward to council at this point. So that was what we were thinking, is that the planning staff would make this recommendation and then ultimately the council would decide.
Well,
Right,
I was actually told that, which is, now you say is not true, that if it was going to fund it, but, and this was supposed to be done along with that other part of the Elmwood. So there's some
Right.
change there. So,
And again, I
agree.
think we want to put it to council with these concerns reflected in the notes. It's not our job to micromanage the Public Works Committee, right? We just want to think about, from the planning perspective, how that road improvement coordinates with TIF funding and other infrastructure projects. And so, you know, I don't know what else unravels if we pull that thread, but it would sure seem to me that this is a good time to finish the downtown and to accelerate that portion, given all the work that we've done there. But I don't want to stiff the people on Elm Lane either, right? So
I actually would want to do the Elmwood from Park from Park Street up to Parmenter. It's all bad. So they say, you know, just taking a small segment, you know, I'm okay, but that whole thing needs doing, and I walk there so often. I can even, well, anyway, so it's
So-
bad, it needs doing, so.
the whole of
But
Elmwood, but Abby was saying,
Yeah.
the reason
Yeah.
that section is in green for a later year is because they're waiting to finish something else, right?
Yeah, I don't think that they're proposing to be able to do the whole of downtown next year. What we would be looking at is over a 2-year period, we would finish the whole of the downtown, including all of Elmwood Avenue.
Okay, I need a second or a alternate motion, need something here now, so. I didn't get a second to Kurt's motion yet,
Clavish will second.
okay? So the motion has been made, has been seconded. Is there any alternate motions? Any other alternate motions? Okay.
We'll discuss it. at
Can you
council.
remind me what the motion is? I've gotten
The
lost.
motion
in
is
the
to-
discussion.
Motion is to
Recommend to
accept it
council
as-
and finance the staff recommendation here.
With our comments.
I guess you just, you know, Abby or Mark, let the record reflect that the plan commission also supported doing Elm Street sooner rather than later.
Well, they will certainly know that.
Okay, okay, all right. All those in favor of this motion, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 6-1. Okay, we are on to Bellefontaine, item number 5, Bellefontaine Boulevard cross-section and regional trail connectivity. This is, I think, Mark Opitz, right?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. 2 weeks ago, I wasn't at your meeting, but I understood you had some questions about the staff comments, so I provided you some additional information. I gave you some examples in your packet, an example of what a path that looks like it's not the focus, it's kind of an afterthought, what that looks like in Madison. And I gave you an example of a path that is kind of the focus of a streetscape. And so my point with my comment in the staff comments 2 weeks ago was that I'm worried that the way Graber Pond Path Trail intersects with the Bell Farms neighborhood, I'm worried that that is not a prominent feature of the design. And I just wanted to flag that for you. I'm concerned that it is it's being brought in kind of as a inconvenience connecting to Bellefontaine Boulevard. So that was the history behind the thinking behind my comments 2 weeks ago. That's all I had to add.
So Mark, how would you want to change it? I can see it set up a right angle there.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, one option, and I'll be very frank, I did mention this to the developer several months ago.
Mhm.
It didn't get very far. You know, they seem to be very interested in this boardwalk concept, which is shown on your drawing in brown. Boardwalks have their shortcomings. They are limited to pedestrian traffic generally. They can be slippery. You know, I think there's an opportunity to bring the path straight in, replacing the boardwalk. I think that's one option, a good option that should be considered here. But really, I felt it was my duty to just flag this as a concern. I think we've really done a good job in the city of developing our shared use trails where they are key features of neighborhoods that they go through, and they don't just do left turn, right turn, you know, kind of as an afterthought. So I just want to flag it as a concern and leave it up to the planning commission to provide the guidance to the staff and the developer.
So Mark, in this case, you're having both boardwalk and the trail. Wouldn't that be great?
I I just think that bringing the path in and then having it a private street for a short distance is not giving the path its priority that it could have. That's what I think.
So, but it will have the same width, right? 10 feet
That
wide?
would be- yeah, I mean, we aren't at that level of design, but that would be
Okay.
the idea. Yeah.
So, but if you could have a choice having a boardwalk and this, wouldn't you want to have it?
I don't think it's necessary to have both, but that's my personal staff. That's my staff opinion.
So one is the boardwalk would be where it's sort of a little bit wettish or not that.
I'm sorry.
The boardwalk is where it's like it's sort of a little bit wet area, like, you got the boardwalk in Pheasant Branch Conservancy, you got a boardwalk on the ponds in Middleton Hills, you got a boardwalk here at Tiedemann Pond. So especially would it be reflecting somewhat like what is in a Pheasant Branch Conservancy?
It would, and I would point out that we have gotten complaints, not me specifically as much, but Parks and Rec have gotten complaints from bicyclists who say the boardwalks are not good surfaces for biking. But I don't think the developer envisions this boardwalk would be used for biking. I think she envisions it would be strictly limited to pedestrians, and that's fine. I just again felt it was my job to flag that this is. I feel that if you're going along Bellefontaine Boulevard and wanting to find Graver Pond Path, it's not going to be very clear that you have to turn down a private street to get to the path. That's what this is all about.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any other questions for Mark? Okay,
Yeah.
I got hands raised. Kurt Palson, then Commissioner Gritchen.
Yeah,
and then
Mark,
Bruce.
I really want to make sure I'm understanding this correct. So whoever's driving the bus here, I appreciate that you zoomed in. That blue arrow that says proposed Graver Pond Trail connection, near where, so the purple dashed line is the 10-foot trail. And your concern is that at the southern end, right down there, right exactly where that cursor is, thank you, that is too harsh of a turn? Is that the one that's bothering you?
And I'm sorry, I cannot currently see it.
Okay.
I have my phone because I'm at a conference, so I can't see. I was able to see it earlier, but I can't see it now for some reason.
So if
but
you remember that the trail goes directly south because it has a pretty right angle on the Bellefontaine, and then it goes on that. That's the concern, that right angle down going south and then a left angle, that those are too jarring of turns on a private drive.
I mean, I just think it reminds me of the example I put in your packet of at University Station where the path kind of does this. It's an afterthought. It's not a proactive design.
But is there, I'm just looking at the design in the topographic map. Sorry, if you could go back up. They don't own the property. Sorry, we'll give the computer here time. The property boundary is just a couple feet to the east of that proposed drive, right? I don't know how you could draw a path in there that's less right angle-y. And I know Kathleen is here. I don't know if she wants to comment too.
Oh, I didn't know.
Kathleen,
I'm glad
you are there.
Well,
Would you okay.
I know that we discussed this, and I guess overall this did come as a surprise to us, even though I know, Mark, we had talked about, making that more straightforward. So now we would have two bike paths, and I think there were some things with the utility too, about we couldn't build over the utility easement, but I'm going to let Bruce talk to that. I could be wrong about that because I thought that there was another data-driven reason, Mark, that we didn't go that route, and I thought it had something to do with utility, but I could be wrong. So obviously the entire purple is meant for the bike path. So then we would be having the purple bike path and then getting rid of the boardwalk, because the entire development now is planned around this configuration of the boardwalk being 10 feet. So I don't see this being the boardwalk and on a path next to that. So if we, I guess if we kept the purple and the boardwalk goes away and becomes also a bike path, the boardwalk is planned as impervious. I don't know what our options are maybe for a bike path to be impervious, because I'd really like to defend that part of it, this impervious part.
You mean it's pervious? It lets it's.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The boardwalk has been budgeted to be pervious. Thank you for that correction. The boardwalk has been budgeted to be pervious because we're really trying to be careful about like how much of the ground we're covering here. And so, you know, I guess with your plan, it definitely could happen. Do we then need to go along Bellefontaine? Do we need a path also along Bellefontaine? Or does that row get narrower and we only have the part, replace the boardwalk with the path, and then it's a straight shot?
Yeah.
And the green line through here is utility easement?
Yeah,
That-
just a second.
okay.
Bruce, are you on?
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that green
Was-
line is the sanitary interceptor. That's currently there that we're working around.
So you can build a boardwalk over that, but you can't build a paved bike path, right?
I don't remember what the.
Well,
Bruce, do you-
I guess it'd be up to the city because if they ever have to get into maintain any sort of maintenance of the bike path, or then you'd have to cut through the bike path.
But I guess,
So
Bruce, just to finish the question, the concern of Mark was that the purple line shown here next to the big blue arrow that you can see has like two sharp turns. Is there any way to design that as a more
Gradual?
gradual curve, or is the topography really against you there? And the property immediately to the east is the city Graber Pond, right?
No, it's not.
Directly east? No, that's
No, that's the Misty Valley. No, it's.
That's
there
Misty
are
Valley.
mountains.
so
So
the
you couldn't build further east on the bike path.
No, we're trying to preserve, there's a real nice tree line there that we're
Okay.
trying to preserve. And this is about the best we could do as far as, getting it away from the trees, minimizing the disturbance from the trees, and then just trying to get it up to Bellefontaine.
Okay.
I was under the impression, like I was feeling like riding along Bellefontaine would be just such a lovely, bike ride, and that's why we put the path there.
And
But
that's
again,
that's consistent with our planning to have
Yeah.
a path to Bellefontaine. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
okay,
along Bellefontaine. My observation is that it's going to be that the path that comes in from Graber Pond is kind of like it's kind of like, oh, this comes in at the southeast corner of our project. We need to accommodate it. Let's do a couple right angles to it just doesn't seem purposeful to me. And that's all I'm flagging. If the plan commission is comfortable with this.
It seems less problematic to me knowing of the topography and the trees there, but
Okay.
that's my only question. So thank you.
I'm just
Yeah.
providing my comments from 2 weeks ago. That's all I'm doing.
I don't have any problem. So I actually was so hopeful, Kathleen, that you were going to have a boardwalk and this, but that was asking way too much. So I didn't know. I thought that's what you were doing, but it's one or the other. So I'm okay with either of them. So I don't really.
no, that is our point. We did want, we want
They want
the
both, yeah.
the bike path that is on the purple line, and then that the boardwalk would be as it's drawn here. But I also, I don't want to, the boardwalk was was a key design element of the entire of the master plan, because it was the thing that really connected you all the way from Parmenter and the multifamily and pulled you through, all the way down to the studio and the inn. And you could tell someone who's staying at the inn to just walk up the boardwalk and grab your coffee. If you're at the multifamily and you want to go down to the wetland area, you follow the boardwalk. So that
Absolutely.
that was the intent of the boardwalk, and from that design perspective, it really connects it all visually and in a spiritual sort of way. But I'll leave my comments at that. That it wasn't, the boardwalk wasn't just oh, like nice to, it was really, really intentionally thought out.
I like your vision, so I think that's wonderful. What the way you expressed is awesome. Yes, so the next Commissioner Palson, you're done.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I just want to say that I like the idea of the boardwalk and the bike path, and I'm not as worried as Mark about the right turns because of the tree line and the topography. So
Yeah.
I support it. Yeah.
I like keeping the trees there too. I think it will be awesome. So Commissioner Gretchen and then Commissioner Randy Bruce.
I had a question about the western side where the boardwalk and the purple dashed bike trail are parallel. Were you saying that you wouldn't be able to accommodate both and have it 20 feet wide for pedestrians and bikes there, so you'd have to choose one or the other?
I'm saying, yeah, where the boardwalk is, where the boardwalk currently is, if we change that to I can't accommodate both the boardwalk at this area of the development. There's a lot of constraints going on. Just in general, the way we pulled back from the pond, and there's multiple factors going in on that particular alignment. So I can either at that point of the development leave it as a boardwalk or turn it into the bike path.
Okay, but so for the western part from that 2 vertical red lines to the west, those would both be there? Yes.
Correct, yes.
There and then west, okay.
Yeah.
And then does the bike path at that western edge meet up to the bike path going up Highway 12 at some point there too? Does that connect?
That'll
Yes.
ultimately connect into the Parmenter Street multi-use path.
Right.
Okay.
And
And
that is,
then, sure,
sorry.
go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, I interrupted, sorry.
Oh, I was just curious if on the eastern edge at Bellefontaine, if there's also a bike path connecting Bellefontaine at Misty Valley, does that continue there as well?
That will be the city thing. So I think that, Mark, that does continue, doesn't it?
That's the crux of the issue that I'm raising, Gretchen.
So it doesn't continue there?
It doesn't seem purposeful to me. I look at the bike path system, especially the Capital City Trail on the east side of Madison, where businesses and residents and community gardens are oriented to the bike path, especially by I think it's the Goodman Community Center, if I remember right, where the Starkweather Creek Trail intersects. And the bike path is a thoroughfare for pedestrians and bicyclists. That's what I am thinking of when I offer these comments. But I totally understand and admire the concept that Kathleen has advanced with the boardwalk. I just wish that there was a way to accommodate both.
So Mike.
I guess I'm still trying to understand if in Misty Valley along Bellefontaine, is there a connection to the bike path, or is that planned to have a connection there that those two would connect as a bike path? Or do you have to go down that hill and across the pond boardwalk where I fell on my bike and nearly broke my hip 2 years ago in the flood?
This is the connection to Bellefontaine Boulevard. This is the connection we're talking about. The trail to trails connection. That's this connection.
Mark, she was asking, there's a gap between where the path is shown in Bell Farm right now on the south side of Bellefontaine, because the city hasn't made a decision along the rest of Bellefontaine through Misty Valley, whether we would decide to install a multi-use path there. That is kind of what our department has been thinking of. And we showed a concept in the comprehensive plan that had a path along that whole segment. And we would have the right of way that
Yes.
once we were to make that improvement in Misty Valley, we could make that connection within Bell Farm.
Yes.
Okay. I'm
And
just trying to
Abby's-
understand how this chunk fits into the wider connections.
So
Yeah.
Abby's absolutely right. So we got so much right away there because there the Bellefontaine is planned as a 4-lane and it's going to be 2 lanes. So we have so much space there. We don't know what to do. And I think there will be, it will make sense to have a bike path there. So I mean, besides other things. So to answer your question, Gretchen, like what Abby said, the answer would be yes. Okay,
Okay.
so
So this
answer will be
basically
possibly
is,
yes. That means we
Yeah.
have the space, and I think we should make it. My recommendation would be, yeah, we should make it happen.
so
More
this would be
questions,
offering
Gretchen,
a
or you're done?
connection. So this would be offering a connection around the pond, but then it could also later connect straight into the other neighborhood. So
Yep,
that
yep,
makes
yep.
sense. And I appreciate that it's not on the boardwalk for the bikers. Thank you.
No, I think that's
Clarifying
great.
the connections.
Great, yeah. Commissioner Randy Bruce.
This is a question for Bruce Holler. Bruce, do you see a way to perhaps soften those right angles at all to make that biking maneuver a little bit easier, more natural?
The one up at Bellefontaine could probably include a little radius, I would suspect. Because we're on the south end, because we're on the inside of that curve, it's a little tougher because this path is directly adjacent to the curb line or the back of the curb. And so that it's going to be a little tough there unless we skew the angle across instead of going at a right angle perpendicular to the street. If we skew it a little bit, we can soften it that way.
I would. I like the path layout in general terms. I understand what Mark is saying about the right angles. It does make it a little more difficult for bikers to utilize. I would just encourage some thoughts from you or design ideas from you to make those transitions as gentle as you can be and still accommodate the rest of your design needs.
And there's really nothing preventing people from leaving the trail and going down the private drive if they want to, and then just hopping on the boardwalk for that small stretch.
Yeah.
Down at the where the road takes a turn south.
Yeah.
Well, or connecting further west. I didn't envision that they would be on the boardwalk at all. I share Gretchen's concern, and that's what I was trying to point out is boardwalks are slippery. They're nice for pedestrians in dry weather, but they are not, the boardwalks that we have in the Conservancy are not really conducive for bicyclists. And so I do think that what will happen here is bicyclists will travel in both directions on that private drive. And then as that drive bends south and goes around the west side of the pond, bicyclists will just continue to the intersection of Parmenter and Bellefontaine. And I think that's great because that's the hub of the neighborhood. That's the town center, if you will. So I just think that all I'm suggesting is that I feel like that's a more purposeful design, and I just was flagging it for that purpose.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Mark. So, but I like Abby's point that there's a likelihood that there will be a extension of this path. So we have a best of both worlds. So Randy, you are done or you have more questions or comments?
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, this is just the providing the input, right, Abby?
No, I think what Mark was recommending is that you make a recommendation on the cross section so that it can go to the council.
Okay, so need a motion to approve the cross section and send it to the council.
Wait, Randy has a hand up and then.
Sorry about that, but are we approving the 10-foot travel lanes or the 11-foot travel lanes? Let me clarify that.
Thank you, Randy, for bringing that up. We are recommending 11 feet, much to probably Kurt Palson's chagrin. They're because of the curves, the vertical and horizontal curves, and parking lanes and snow encroachment, things like that. I see the merit in the 11-foot lanes for Bellefontaine Boulevard. So, I mean, admittedly, that's more my recommendation than my colleagues, but that's my recommendation.
Well, and Public Works recommended 11-foot travel lanes, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
this
so
is-
that is their recommendation too. So,
Yeah,
so
I mean,
I agree with that because of its being hilly nature. So I don't have any issues with that. So,
I'm going to have to accede to their wishes. Every once in a while, Public Works might get something right, but I still prefer narrower travel lanes to slow down traffic. But I guess in hill and snow, as long as it doesn't really
We need-
destroy the design concept, Bruce or Kathleen, you guys are okay with that?
Yeah, I think we decide, or, oh, go ahead, Bruce.
No, we kind of, kind of gave into the Public Works wanting the 11-foot lanes and because of the sort of, the curvature of the street, allowing a little bit more forgiveness as they're, as you're driving through.
yeah,
I was
Bruce,
concerned about the increase in the impervious, but again, I recognize that there are trade-offs, and I think Sean looked really closely at this. So, would we prefer 10? Yes, but we totally get it. And it doesn't really, we are able to work because the row stays the same. So we're able to work with that.
Well,
Thank you.
if you're looking for a motion, I'll make a motion to recommend the 11-foot travel lane. So as a school bus driver, I'd be terrified of 10-foot lanes, especially in the winter. So
all right.
I'm biased,
I
but
remember you saying that, yeah.
I'm going to make that motion.
Okay, who is the
I'll
second
second
one?
it, John.
Thank you.
Okay,
Gretchen.
okay.
Thank you.
Do we need any further questions or comments, Abby, or that's,
Is
do
it
we need anything more?
one last question, just
Yes, go ahead.
are the terrace widths now balanced?
I mean,
No,
what,
we took a foot out of each side. So we expanded a foot in each direction. So now the left side is 8 feet of terrace and the right side is 7.
Okay.
Are you okay with that, Sandy?
Oh, I am. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Okay. Any other questions or comments now? Any other questions or comments? Great job, Kathleen and Bruce. So I think it's to your advantage, and there are going to be buses going over there. We have to keep everybody happy, and it is a little bit hilly there. So I think overall, Public Works does a great job. So I think it all looks good. If there are no questions or comments, yeah, I see somebody having questions or comments. Otherwise, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Great job, Kathleen and Bruce. So I know this is the last item. So Elder Ramsey, are you thinking of talking about meeting in person like we are doing in the city council, or you like to? Yeah, I'd like to get some. I know it's not on the agenda, but we could talk about it, Abby, or not.
I can
Do
put
we
it on
want
your
to-
next agenda if you'd like.
I want
Okay.
to put it on the agenda. It's not on the agenda, so we can't discuss it tonight.
Okay. Put
But
it
I
on the
think we would-
agenda.
We would like council to make a determination for all the committees and treat all the committees the same.
Plan commission
So-
is very special, Bruce. There's Kurt, so, well, okay, all right. So that's a fair thing to say that, so Abby, then should we put on the city council agenda then first before it comes to the plan commission?
Yeah, it might be less confusing to the public if all of the committees are handling their meetings the same way. I will just mention that we sent off a public hearing notice for a hearing that's being held at the second council meeting in April. And we included that meeting was being held in person. We have to set our public hearing notices pretty well in advance. So if there is going to be a change, we're going to need just a few weeks notice so we can make sure that we get the right information into the hearings.
And we already have public hearings scheduled for the first April meeting, the Century Avenue Madison Development Corporation, right?
That's correct.
That
yeah.
was noticed as a Zoom meeting, right?
Yeah, yep. And you all
Okay.
already have that in your calendars. We can't
Okay.
change that.
Okay.
But we can
Okay.
put an item on the agenda that night to discuss it.
Okay, okay. And also then we need to put on the city council as well, that they should talk about it.
I think it's on every council agenda.
Oh, yes, yes, it is. Well, if there are, I guess we have no other items, need a motion to adjourn, unless somebody wants to tell a story, so.
Move to
No
adjourn.
stories. Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
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 Okay, anyone opposed? So we are adjourned. Thank
Right.
you.
Adieu.
Night.
Thanks all.